Voltaire, the French Enlightenment philosopher and writer, is quoted as saying, "I have never made but one prayer to God, a very short one. O Lord, think my enemies ridiculous," and God granted it. I'm not going to pretend to know what he meant by this, but I have what I feel is a pretty good interpretation. Comedy is a very powerful human characteristic, and it has the ability to change perspectives and disarm the most frightening subjects, or in Voltaire's case, his enemies. I've often stated on this show that good ideas will always beat bad ideas, but I am feeling more and more these days that bad ideas need to not only be defeated, but made fun of and ridiculed. With the rise of wokeness and what I would call tyrannical political dictators and big tech censorship, I truly believe the road out of these messes that have been made is comedy. I'm not alone here with this, as the counterculture narrative is going in this direction, where more and more people are looking for this in untraditional media methods. These are big ideas, and I need some help to unpack them. So for today's episode of the podcast, I have invited Greg Wycliffe, a Canadian content producer who makes hilarious videos, often centered around political satire and humor, while delivering insightful analysis of what most people feel are ridiculous government policies. So without further ado, welcome to the Flow of Discourse. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Flow of Discourse. I am, as always, your host, Brendan Kennedy, and today we are joined by Greg Wycliffe. Greg, how are you?
I'm doing well, Brendan. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I'm really glad that you agreed to come on the show here. First off, I wanted to say I really love your content. I got so much laughs out of all the videos that you've made. It must be quite a bit of hard work to have done those.
Yeah. I appreciate that. It's always nice to hear someone's face and voice saying that as opposed to just a comment. But yeah, no, I appreciate that.
So I want to kind of start from the beginning. So where are you from and what's your background?
Yeah, so I grew up in Kingston, Ontario. I went to school in London, Ontario, University of Western Ontario, and also Fanshawe College for radio broadcasting. And then for the past 8 or so years, I've been in Toronto, Ontario. So I've always been an Ontario boy, so to speak. I've traveled a little bit here and there, but essentially I've always had an interest in media. And that's kind of where my post-secondary journey took me. I was working in radio broadcasting. So I was working at Z1035 and Evanov Radio Group. That's a radio conglomerate in Toronto. That was after university there. I was actually working in sales, selling radio ads on Z1035, Proud FM, Jewel 88.5, and other stations across the country. But I was like an account manager role, so like a sales job.
Yeah.
And then I pivoted to video production at Visual Communications and Marketing, which is a niche video production house that focuses on small to medium-sized businesses and like B2B businesses. So it's it was kind of telling a lot of companies and organizations of, you should be using more video instead of these brochures. Not to say that the brochures aren't effective, but you should start to build out your digital assets, and specifically video, because it's the most powerful in this day and age, next to what we're doing now, which is like a video call, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, the digital. So you kind of have like an on the ground kind of feel for advertising and kind of. Would you say, like, do you see like a lot of wokeness in like the advertising agencies there? Like, is there?
Yeah. So
whether it be,
it's a great question. So I noticed wokeness going through university. However, it was not as aggressive as it is now. I've met some younger kids through politics who are in their like 20s and mid 20s who are going through or completing university, and it sounds brutal now.
Yeah.
In terms of just how aggressive the adopting the ideologies are. Like, I had university professors who would, I was it was a communications degree that I was taking. Media, information, and technoculture, fancy term. I'm sorry, Western University. It's a fancy term for a communications degree. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff about Foucault and all these. I'm trying to think of all the other postmodernists. Like, we read all about the postmodernists, and I'm happy to say, in retrospect, that I always thought it was okay. I can write essays about this that are interesting. Not really sure if that's going to get me a job. And it was actually like the last year university that I was like listening to this scatterbrained professor talking about the cultural significance of the Spice Girls. And I'm thinking, this is not going to get me paid. This is not going to get me money after this is all said and done. I'm doing the math in lecture, and I'm like, this is like $150 a lecture, bro. Thankfully, I had the practical experience from college as well. But I tell people, the university education, the college education helped me get a job interview, and the university education helps me get into interesting conversations at parties about, postmodernism, blah blah blah. But
So that's a expensive ticket to learn how to talk at parties, basically.
yeah, but it is worth mentioning, just like to bring it into politics. There were a couple key things that I learned, or that was not even that I learned, but that kind of was hammered into me, or that really stuck out to me in university and also college. So in university, there was a class called Political Economy of Media. It was a second-year course, and it said, "Hey, did you know that like 85% of media and media properties in North America, or I guess America specifically, are owned by only 6 different organizations, and they're all like interconnected like this. Disney owns the History Channel, and they showed us all of that." And that was back then. I thought, so conspiracies are plausible, conspiring, like, okay, like learning that in university was pretty, or at least that was my perspective on it. I'm like, they're all in bed together. That's pretty, wow.
Yeah.
However, specifically to democracy, I learned about the theory of democracy, and I forget who wrote about it, but they talked about the public sphere and how it's important to be able to exchange ideas like in a coffee shop, and then you kind of talk out the ideas, and then you vote and decide as a group, democracy, blah, blah, blah. And, transitioning into college, they were telling us about the CRTC, how important the CRTC is. If you break the CRTC rules, you will lose our radio license. Like, our professors drilled that into us, and for good reason, because that's the way it's supposed to work. And that's the way it does work for the most part. But I got into politics after the Toronto mayoral election, when I saw how, you can disagree with Faith Goldie, the candidate there, and she certainly has a spotted past and has made some, questionable decisions on podcasts she's hopped onto. I would definitely agree, but you can't just cancel someone's radio ads and not give them a reason. And that's what happened to her. And I'm like, well, there's these CRTC rules. You broke the rules. That's not allowed. Like, that's what's supposed to keep this democracy alive. And when I saw all that happen, and then on top of that, Brendan, no one talking about it, I was like, this is not a good sign for our country if that's the case.
No. I guess maybe a lot of people probably don't know what the CRTC is. I'm not so much university educated by anything, by any means, but I am. I would call myself well-read, I suppose. And so I did work quite a bit in communications, customer service, and that sort of stuff. Right. CRTC and Privacy Office of Canada and other places like that were quite overbearing in my life with that. Okay. What is the CRTC?
Yeah, the CRTC is the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission. So it is the Canadian FCC.
Hmm.
FCC is like Federal Communications Commission in the States. And essentially they look over, ensuring broadcast is kind of follows certain mandates and reaches certain goals. So, we have to make sure that broadcast licenses of basically everyone who has a TV station and everyone who has a radio station should be following certain rules. They should have a certain quality standard, and it should be the main kind of overarching stuff that they say the CRTC is about is to ensure it's like quality programming that help Canadians. And there's a lot of stuff about like democracy in there as well, when you get into like the different parts of the CRTC. But once again, the Toronto mayoral election, it was kind of clear that it's this bureaucratic, slow-moving organization,
Yeah.
and by the sounds of it, it's like, at the end of the day, it's like any other corporation. It's made up with a bunch of individuals and a bunch of personalities. Hopefully, these personalities and individuals aren't partisan. Hopefully, they're not influenced by massive media corporations and their potential to influence, or I don't want to say bribe. I don't want to say, I don't want to say anything like that happens. But I don't know. It's
pretty bureaucratic. It's I was pretty concerned last spring when the Trudeau government was looking at using it for people like me and you, like what we do, and for them to be like, well, we're going to start dictating what you can and can't say. And
so you're talking about Bill C-10. Yeah, that's
right.
Huge.
Yep.
So, oh my God, Bill C-10. So, oh man, don't get me started on this one. So, in a nutshell, what's crazy about Bill C-10 is we have the CRTC that applies to broadcast radio, broadcast television. There's all these rules, and if you have a television station, you're reaching hopefully tens to hundreds to millions of Canadians, millions of people. So it makes sense to have certain standards of what you're allowed to say and can't say, etc. So, but like the internet is, with Web 2.0, essentially anyone can start a YouTube channel, anyone can pop up and say whatever they want, any niche topic, anywhere at all around the world. To take this body, this governing body, the CRTC, and just say, okay, now we're going to apply it to the whole internet. It's very absurd. And the fact that they're just kind of casually like, yeah, we're just going to have control over all of the content on the internet now. What's the big deal? And it's very, I hate to use the B word, and I mean this in an endearing way. It's a very handy term. It's very boomer. Like, it's a very like kind of baby boomer perspective to just be like, yeah, well, we're going to control the internet now, you kids. And it's like, yeah, you guys don't understand how the internet works, obviously.
It almost sounds unenforceable too. It's like kind of like trying to kill every insect ever with a fly swatter. It's just not going to happen.
So I'm trying to think if there's any actual merits to what the Liberal Party has proposed with Bill C-10, and I really struggle to find anything of merit, because everything I've really been embracing the cynicism of politics, and I see Bill C-10, and I don't listen to all of the flower or the window dressing that the Liberals give it, and I kind of cut straight to the meat and potatoes, or straight to the point, which is that they are usurping control over Canadians and how they access the internet. Like they're gaining control over that. The federal government is going to have control over the algorithms of big tech, which is crazy. And then also the thing that they don't talk about is they're essentially going to be taxing our internet on top of that. They're going to be taxing the big tech platforms, but that might trickle down to Canadians, where we will have to pay for YouTube, or we will have to pay for these different big tech platforms. And if I'm not mistaken, that's already happening in other countries, so it's not completely unfounded.
No, it's not.
And then while I'm on the topic, we can move on to another topic after this, but what really grinds my gears more than anything about how they try to sell Bill C-10 is they say it's going to help Canadian artists. It's going to help. We're going to help you discover Canadian content. So many things wrong with this. And first and foremost, it's like, hey, as much as I have troubles and issues with YouTube and other big tech platforms for maybe censoring me here and there or shadow banning me here and there,
Yeah.
I would not even have an audience if it wasn't for these platforms. Did Justin Trudeau help me build an audience? Did he help build YouTube? No, he did. He hasn't done anything for me. And I don't expect the federal government to do anything for me. I know I can jump through a bunch of hoops to try to get like grants or whatever. But this idea that, like they kind of try to paint this picture like big tech is like, stomping on Canadian artists. And it's like, if anything, big tech has lifted up so many Canadian artists. There are so many huge Canadian YouTubers, and you wouldn't even know it because they don't really talk about being Canadian. But it's like these people are wildly popular not because of the federal government is going to like prop them up or something. It's totally crazy. And the money thing, they say, oh, we're going to like get money back to Canadian artists. No. Like YouTube pays out like hundreds of millions, if I'm not mistaken, to Canadian content creators, and this is true for other big tech platforms as well. So the whole every single one of their arguments is actually laughable, and anybody who's like trying to defend it, it's like no, I don't try. Like this person, this is not right. This is not right.
Yeah, and you could really see that with how the CBC operates. Like this one kind of hits close to home. I used to really, really love This Hour Has 22 Minutes. It used to be so funny.
Same.
Everything from making fun of Neil Young. They did a parody instead of Heart of Gold. It was Pot of Gold. It was hilarious. Now it's gone woke and it's gone broke, and that's the case. Like the viewership is taking a hammering.
Yeah,
I'm kind of with Peter Mansbridge a little bit that. I understand the need for a national broadcast corporation a little bit, especially if you understand its foundations that at one point Canadians didn't even really know they were Canadians because the radio would only pick up U.S. signals, right? So I think that there is a need for a little bit for the CBC, but at this point it's so broken, it just might as well get thrown in the garbage, and that's kind of a shame.
Yeah. I call This Hour Has 22 Minutes. I call it state-approved comedy.
Yeah.
So it's like it can only be so funny when it has to be like state-approved, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like when I see their content, I just think, okay, we can only make fun of Albertans and white people. It's very specific in terms of like the targets of who they can target. And if we're making fun of Trudeau, we can only make fun of his hair. Like
or his beard.
There's almost like a whole bunch of like unwritten rules that they have, and occasionally they're able to like scrap something together that kind of makes me chuckle. But most of the time, I'm just like wincing and like, ugh, this is really like I said, it's a state approved sort of like thought. It's almost like this is how you should think. It's weird how all this like late night comedy turns into like clapter, not laughter, but clapter, to be like, I agree with that political stance. And it's like we're supposed to make people laugh and escape reality and have a little bit of escapism, as opposed to enforce, the political ideology of the day that makes us a good person. But back to your CBC point, yes, the idea of having a state broadcaster for sure, and I think, to be fair, there has been a lot of CBC programming that Canadians can be proud of. Recently, though, it's the minority because you have to remember they do make a lot of content, right? Yeah, like it's not just all woke crap. That being said, a lot of it is. And I guess I say that because I don't want to like cast aside the good stuff that's come from the CBC. I do want to have like a little bit of balance and nuance there. But like you said, it's like it's become such a big machine and kind of this big sort of I don't know. They kind of like cover each other's backs, right? Like if you criticize any part of the CBC, then it's, you know what I mean? Like they don't want to even open the conversation.
No.
then that's a lot of federal funding up for grabs, or potentially out the door. And it sucks that pretty well, I don't want to, is this a bold statement? Pretty well every like governmental arm, I feel, has that same attitude, which is disgusting. It's not about being a proud Canadian or being a proud Canadian bureaucratic arm or governmental body. No, it's like the money.
Yeah.
We want the money for more salaries so I can hire my useless cousin to get him a salary.
Well, and also the one of the things that really grinded my gears is I did have a previous podcast at one point where I looked quite in depth into the CBC, and they're always tooting like more diversity and everything like that. But if you look at the board of directors for the CBC, it lacks like every aspect of diversity.
Yeah, there's a lot of humor in that, actually.
Yeah, there is.
How it's champagne socialists who like pity black people, basically. Like they don't genuinely want the best for whatever it is, Indian, Pakistani, Somalian Canadians. They just do this disgusting thing where they tokenize them, and they do it to like stroke their own egos.
Yeah.
And I'm not even afraid saying that anymore, just because it's like when I see it, I feel like it's so blatant at this point. And especially now with the way the woke always attacks people like me for being racist or whatever, it's like, no, you guys are actually disgusting human beings, and the way you tokenize people, and you should have to defend yourself, actually.
Big time.
Yeah. So
I can be on board with that. I'm going to change gears a little bit here. So from George Carlin ripping on soft language to Jordan Peterson today warning people about the dangers of political correctness. Do you think that there are any signs of political correctness and cancel culture going away anytime soon? The counterculture narrative is definitely going the other way in some respects. This really shows with things like Let's Go Brandon and other things. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Are the tides turning?
That is a great question. I'm a huge fan of George Carlin. I think in a sense it already has. And I think that, so cancel culture is not going to go away because woke culture isn't going to go away. It's kind of like they kind of go hand in hand, right? Because like woke culture and political correctness, and I believe it was George Carlin that said this, actually. Political correctness is polite fascism. And, and although that has to do with culture, it has even more to do with politics, because this is the sword and the shield of liberal politics or left-wing politics, which is these conservatives and and blah 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 and Albertans and do, and they sound so polite talking about, I can't think of a specific quote, but Justin Trudeau will say something about conservatives and they're so divisive, and I can't believe the way that they, are so backwards in conversion therapy, blah, blah, blah. He's very polite when he says it.
Yeah.
But you just coached the country to hate conservatives. It's like he's polite, but he's polite. Oh my God, you can't say anything that's wrong with that. He said it in a very polite fashion. And the same thing is happening right now with the whole division between the jabbed and the unjabbed, or the circumcised and uncircumcised, which is him saying like, oh, they're all racist misogynists.
Yeah.
Oh, but he was so polite, and he sounded so cogent and calculated when he said it. It's polite fascism. I don't care how nice the sound of his tone of his voice is. If he sounds sing-songy, can you imagine Chrystia Freeland? And that's why we're going to put them into camps. And it's like, oh, she sounds so sweet. Yeah, she's marching us off onto trains right now, guys.
They need to go somewhere where they can. They need to go somewhere where they can concentrate on what they have done.
Yeah, and it's, hey, I'm your kindergarten teacher. We have to do something about these people, kids. And it's really disturbing because it's working on a lot of people. However, so it's not cancel culture is not going to go away as long as kind of that approach is effective and people continue to follow, and like as long as they don't see through this like fake politeness, it'll continue to be a thing. However, the reason I say it's kind of already over is, you know, I am hoping that Donald Trump is kind of marks the beginning of the end of like political correctness. And like I feel, because we're seeing other Trumpian characters around the world slowly but surely prop up, and it really marks an end to this like fake politeness and almost a beginning to this almost like recess brawler sort of almost like unpolite, a little bit, not like impolite, but it's kind of getting a little bit more gritty out there in the political
Yeah.
world. And I'm hoping that that's going to enter Canadian politics slowly but surely in this decade, because we really need it, because we have ineffective leaders in every major party. And the only person who's really speaking out in a meaningful way, you can basically count them on one hand.
Yeah.
You know, Maxime Bernier, Randy Hillier, and then I suppose I'll throw in Derek Sloan. You know, like those are the three people who are actually saying stuff, who actually have a backbone, who actually have a nutsack, who are actually calling people out. Even Aaron O'Toole now is just like such an ineffective leader. We need some scrapping, you know, so to speak. Like we need some actual real debates. And yeah, I think people are, you know what? It reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend who was saying, well, I would just never associate with someone like Trump or some right-wing person, blah, 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 and da, 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 da. And, you know, Trump is just so aggressive and he's very rude and da, 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 da. And I said, you know what? You're right. He is rude. He is abrasive. But guess what? I would much prefer that than what we get with Justin Trudeau. What do we get with Justin Trudeau? We get somebody who is a slimy weasel who will lie to your face while stabbing you in the back over and over again. You prefer that? You prefer somebody who is essentially emotionally manipulating you, and he makes you feel good, but then he fucks you over. Like, no.
Yeah.
Like I would much prefer somebody like Trump. Yeah, maybe he makes me feel uncomfortable, whatever. At least he's honest with me. Don't you want politicians to be honest? Hello.
And that's
like,
the thing, right? The truth absolutely hurts. Now I did grow up with a grandmother who I guess you could call like kind of abrasive, for lack of a better term. She was very old country kind of thing, but her whole thing was she was always straightforward about what the truth was. And so that has its pros and its cons, but there's much to learn from that. If anything, I would say about the Joe Biden presidency, he's only said one thing that's correct, and that's China is out to get our lunch, and that's true. Do you think that they're going to stop? Like, there's a lot of enemies in the world. Do you think they're just going to stop because Justin Trudeau asked them to nicely to stop? Like, that's just not going to be the case. They see through all of this. Absolutely, the world is dangerous. You need to be weaponized with the truth, and you need to be able to speak it and even be rude about it sometimes.
Yeah, and I think there's the main difference between because you know there's like the whole left wing right wing paradigm, like liberal conservative.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't even know if like these labels are even helpful. Sometimes they are, but
Sometimes.
When it comes down to it, I really see it as a fundamental difference in your worldview.
Mm-hmm.
Leftists have a very simple fairy tale storybook like view of the world, where the most evil thing in existence is a old white Republican Catholic. Like that is the most evil thing that could ever exist, is some like wealthy white Republican guy who worships Jesus Christ. Like that's he's so backwards. Oh my God, he likes capitalism and all this stuff. And it's like, like you live in a bubble. Okay. Yeah. Like there's a lot. Why do you think so many refugees exist? Let's just start with there. Why do you think people are coming in droves to America and want to live in America so bad? Where are they coming from? Why are they fleeing that place? And on and that's just like skimming the surface, obviously. But the fact, like there's this sort of really silly, innocent perspective of the only thing bad is systemic racism in America. Like this is the only thing that's bad in the entire world, and it's actually laughable how childish that is. And yet, so much of leftist politics in North America is the policies, not the policies, but more like the rhetoric, and the reason how they get people excited is based on this very storybook view of the world. And I feel like a lot of more conservative people, or people who don't have more right-wing worldview, have a much more realistic, and you could call it cynical if you want, but where they're like, I think that there's a war for resources and money and oil going on constantly, and there's a lot of at stake, and a lot of evil people, or not even necessarily evil, but there's rulers of nations who have agendas, and they're going to try and get what they want,
and they don't have the same checks and balances as we do, and that's where the danger comes from, right? Like, I'm a big proponent of history, and like a lot of the things that you said, like commenting on racism, like one of the things that we all know to be true is that when the lie is told often enough, it becomes the truth. And this is what I see, like, on a day-to-day basis, and I fail to see how a lot of people don't see that. Like, they don't catch that, and then they don't even bother to look beyond the surface of it. We do need unity in North America. That's Canada and the U.S. We need unity. We need something that's going to bring everybody together eventually. I don't know what the answer to that is. What I keep trying to tell people on a regular basis is that the pendulum always swings, because if you remember the 2000s, it was most of the conservative Republicans were trying to do mass censorship and the Patriot Act and that sort of thing. And then now we're into this era. And the reason why I think people are starting to shift to conservatism and republicanism is because more often than not, they're siding with the truth.
It's more fun too.
Yeah, it is more fun.
Like it's way more fun. It's so stuffy now. I think it was like the lead singer to like the Sex Pistols or something. Like some punk rocker came out like from the UK, and he's like, I can't believe it's gotten to the point where like leftists are like the stuffy conservative types now that we used to make fun of, like back in like the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
And that's totally what I think is happening. Like when it comes to the gospel of wokeism, if you disagree with, like, if you call white fragility stupid, people will think you're the devil. And it's like, yeah, it's a dumb book. Okay. Like there's not really much in there other than, wanting to feel bad about yourself. Yeah, it's wild. It's crazy. And I think that, you're talking about cancel culture. I say that it's kind of already over because people like Trump thrived on cancel culture. He was supposed to be canceled right away. Oh, he said something about Mexicans. He was speaking about gangs specifically. Anyway, they're bringing drugs, but they're rapists. But that was the beginning of his campaign, and he ended up
good impersonation, by the way. I
should
that.
work on it more. On it more. But yeah, and like that is like there's this young paleo conservative in Canada, and you got to look out for this kid. His name's Tyler L. Russell, and he has this live stream called Canada First, and he is like right wing, like he is like Christian, and he is like he's almost like straight out of the 1950s. Like his rhetoric is like extreme, but I mean, not extreme compared to what they teach in schools now about transgenderism. It's actually just like a regular conservative from the 1950s. Anyway,
yeah,
it's extreme compared to what they talk about in the CBC. But my point is I've talked to this kid before, and he's like, he's so fearless in the face of cancel culture. And it's like really, really inspiring. And it really is what right wingers in Canada need to adopt, because the more fearless we are in the face of CBC, Toronto Star headlines, then the less power we give them. And the the more that they stop caring about their absurd headlines, or even the absurd statements that Trudeau might say, where they say, "Oh, you made it this medical decision. Actually, you're misogynist and racist." It's the whole thing is a joke, right? And we need
Big
to
time.
start treating it that way.
I have always said that good ideas will always be bad ideas, but I really think now, after especially watching a lot of your content, all these bad ideas need to be mocked and ridiculed, and we can't
Yeah.
stop. We can't stop. I wanted to ask you, I did see on your Facebook page that you had ran for the 2019 election under the PPC banner.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
That's awesome. What was that experience like?
That was oh my God. That's when my innocence got taken away in politics, I gotta say. So I'll start at the beginning. Joining the PPC was a very beautiful thing, because I went to the PPC conference, not knowing what I'm getting myself into. A friend of a friend, a new friend who I met through politics, was like, "You should run as a candidate." And I saw some other candidates, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm probably a better public speaker than this person, so why not? I'll go for it." My logic being that if I can inspire just one person, one other Canadian, to actually give a crap about Canadian politics, like that's a huge, because in many ways that's what Maxime Bernier did for me. He said, "Hey,
Yeah.
screw you guys. I'm going to start my own party, and we're going to do," and all this stuff where it's like, whoa, this guy's actually making sense, and he's not part of the same, boring establishment, blue and red. But it was cool because I was meeting a lot of like-minded people, and a lot of people like me who are just like, okay, I don't know anything much about politics really. I just want to try to help, like a very sweet kind of Canadian sentiment of like, yeah, I want to help. I want to do that. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try and do my best. And when I went to the PPC conference, there was a lot of people like that. And trust me, they're not just chumps. We're talking about farmers. We're talking about urban professionals. We're talking about all sorts of people from across the gamut, refugees, immigrants as well, who are like, yeah, I don't really like where this country's going. I just got here, by the way. I just got here. And I don't like what this looks like.
I wanted to touch on that a little bit. I did work for the Liz Valley campaign in Chatham, Kent, Leamington. And I was astounded how the media tried to portray things. I know this is off topic of your story, but
it's on topic. It's definitely on topic.
I think it's worth stating how the media had demonized this huge group of people, which we all have the same kind of grievances with how things are going, and to simply ignore it and call it a bunch of right-wing fascists is not doing the country any favors. But not only did I see diversity of opinion, but I seen diversity of every walk of life. Like you said, there was immigrants, there was people who are gay, and everything else. They all are fed up with the narrative, and there was so much of that. It was mind blowing.
Yeah, and the intense irony of it all is that the natural sort of diversity that came about, or that's come about in the PPC, is reflective of that natural sort of diversity of Canada.
Yeah,
where it's sure, it's majority white, like the majority of Canada is, but you have a lot of different people from different backgrounds, and no one really cares that they're from different backgrounds, and it's just a beautiful thing. But yeah, it is. Some would say that the smearing was systemic. I don't like to use that word. I'm kind of using it facetiously, but yeah, there was obviously Operation Cactus from the Daisy Group. Warren Kinsella blocked me on Twitter. Yeah, I don't really care for that guy.
I can't say I'm familiar with who he is. I'm pulling a blank.
Warren Kinsella is like a wannabe Roger Stone. He's like this. He's like this political strategist, and he basically coaches a bunch of young interns to go online and bait people on social media to try to get them excited and angry to make them look racist. That's essentially the whole thing. It's pretty sad. It's pretty disgusting.
It's the same. It's like the Russian trolls.
Actually, yeah, that's actually not a bad comparison in terms of it's such a weird media landscape that we have right now, where you can take a screenshot on Facebook and then it'll like trickle up into like a CBC news headline that tries to call all of Alberta racists, and it's like, is this really news? Interesting.
No, it's not news.
It's
Not news at all. No. Today in the news, we had found 5 racist Albertan tweets. Therefore,
Yeah.
Alberta is racist. Yes, yes.
Literally, yeah, literally.
So, where did you run for your candidacy?
Yeah. So I ran in Parkdale High Park, and it's a beautiful riding.
Mhm.
It's always, I think it was conservative one time since its inception, but it's pretty well a liberal versus NDP battleground contemporarily, and it's a very interesting riding because on one end you have like champagne socialists who don't mind paying taxes for the for the lesser people at the bottom of the hill. I mean, I'm not even afraid to say that because I'm sorry, like some of you do have that attitude, and it's really it's like so elitist, so elitist. And then at the other end of the riding, you have Parkdale, which is sort of gentrifying, sort of struggling with a lot of different community housing, which is reflected in crime rates and a lot of drug use and things like this. So it's a very diverse riding. It was a good experience, but yeah, like I said, the more beautiful parts were meeting other PPC candidates who were, innocent and naive and just wanting to do the right thing. And that was a really powerful thing. It's like, okay, this is, like me, they want to do the right thing. But there was a moment which was a foreshadowing of the whole campaign where someone said, well, you can't say anything about this or else, they're going to try to make you look racist. And then I looked over at him and I said, listen, man, no matter what happens, they're going to make us look racist. Okay. Like it doesn't matter what you do. Like it's going to happen. And sure enough, it was widespread. And like just some highlights of the campaign for me, I had an 18-year-old volunteer.
Yeah.
Who spoke fluent Polish, by the way, really bright young kid. And we're going down the road canvassing and like on a kind of, residential street. And then there's this guy saying, racist, get out of here, racist. And I had to jog over and be like, do you mind? Like this kid's like 18 years old. He's a volunteer.
Yeah.
Like, is there something you want to chat about? Like you're twice this kid's size. Like, are you okay? I also had an Indian volunteer as well. Really sweet guy, this Christian guy. And he was volunteering with me. And he got stuff thrown at him just for simply having a PPC. Like it was like, vegetables or something.
That's heartbreaking, actually.
It was, when he told me that, I was speechless. And a lot of these kind of more traumatic experiences, like they turned my backs on me in debates at one point, like the Green Party candidate and the NDP candidate, like children. And yeah, like at the time I was kind of just pushing through and doing the campaign, but afterward I was kind of thinking like that was actually kind of traumatic.
Yeah.
To kind of have people, a lot of people consistently tell you what's in your heart. Actually you are racist in your heart. Like to have so many people do that, it's really disturbing. Like it really did take a toll on me. And I didn't notice it until like months after the campaign had finished, and I was like, man, that really like actually messed me up. And
it did the same thing for me. Like I wasn't the candidate, but I could only imagine if I was the candidate, it would have done that. But it's like I was in the grind every day, right? Like on the volunteer team and organizing like rallies.
Okay, so you know what it's like then, yeah.
Yeah, and after you lose, it's like,
you
don't feel good after, like at all. I wanted to mention just a little bit, like in regards to the other candidates' unprofessionalism and
Mm,
people throwing things. That
hmm
I mean, I don't know you, but I get the sense that you would not necessarily do that to somebody in a million years, and neither would I. Like I do not treat people that way. Um,
That's
I
a good
find it.
point. Yeah.
I feel it really repulsive that we're accused of like the worst atrocities of humanity,
hmm
and meanwhile, these people would be so eager to rush to some pretty terrible tactics or treat other human beings that way.
That's actually that's a really great point. Um, I think it's hard to even talk about because it's almost like not something that gets talked about much at all. But
Yeah,
it's very I think it's a really valid point. It's like what is in the heart of like the average PPC person? They wouldn't have the malice to do something kind of so unfair like that. And it's only now that people are being pushed to the limit of being pushed out of society and just having like their lives taken away from them, so to speak, and these insane lockdowns. It's only now that people they're not doing it out of malice. They're doing it out of like self-defense, basically. Like they're doing it out of desperation.
yeah.
um so it's
Well,
yeah.
Jordan Peterson says like this doesn't happen overnight, and this is a lot like a predatorial animal, because a
hmm
predatorial cat, for example, is not just going to jump you; it's going to follow you, and then
mm,
it's going to come up to you just an inch, and you won't notice. And then it'll come just an inch, and then you'll notice it, and then it'll jump back a few inches, and then it comes back, right? So that's exactly what this is. It's just
Interesting.
inch by inch, inch by inch, inch by inch, and then you don't notice, and then by the time you notice, it's already too late. Um, so it's kind of interesting how it is in nature as it is in humanity, which is always the case, right? Um,
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you. So we got Derek Sloan's political party. We got the Ontario First Party, and then
hmm
we got three of these parties coming into play here. The new blue party as well. This
Yeah.
is in my. I don't think this looks good, but I wanted to get your take on that.
Well, I'm actually announcing my own party for Ontario.
Oh, nice.
No, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Uh,
I mean, what
yeah,
difference would it make now? I
right.
mean,
Yeah, yeah. Let's add another one. Um, so I'm really hoping that right wingers in Ontario can get their crap together in the next few months, because this problem is reflective of the federal or the national problem, which is essentially conservatives keep losing.
yeah,
And I know that Doug Ford won last time, but you know we're we're losing. Let's face it. Leftist ideology dominates the news media, dominates the culture that we're entrenched in, and we need to win. And winning is takes a form of collectivism. Okay. So a lot of right wingers are more like, individualistic in terms of their values, which makes sense. My freedoms, my stuff, my private property. And that's all fine and good. But when it comes to winning, there needs to be a degree of collectivism that's going on. When it comes to these different parties, I'll just be flat out. I like Randy Hillier the most
yeah,
because he is the most aggressive with his rhetoric and what he talks about. He's not somebody who's like, well, I'm vaccinated, and saying that I'm vaccinated, I'm going to talk about why I don't like mandates. I'm vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. But da, 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 da. Like that is weak rhetoric. The rhetoric needs to be stop the mandates. No one should be taking this. And that is where Randy takes it. And I think that is the kind of Trumpian energy that needs to grow in
yeah,
this country. That being said, I think Sloan has a lot of potential in his political career. I don't think right now is the time for him, but I'm excited to see where he goes, because I think he does. He's a great speaker, and I think he's getting stuff done quickly. So it's not that I don't necessarily believe in what he's doing in Ontario with his new. It's just he's kind of all over the place right now, right? Because he started the federal party and now he's doing the Ontario. So it's like, okay,
that was my big
Yeah.
takeaway from him. Like I don't necessarily feel like I like him, but I don't think he has my best interest in mind, because he's just the type of person, when things go south, he could just pick up and go anywhere. Like that's
Yeah. I hope he teams up with Hillier before this election. That would be very, very exciting. Because that would a lot of right wingers would love to see that. They would love to see that. And then if they did that, then maybe Jim Carey-Host would fall in line potentially. But that sort of collectivism needs to happen, because if we go into an Ontario election and all these three of the Ontario First and True Blue and Derek doing his thing, it's like, guys, like I'm voting NDP. Like, I don't know what you guys are doing. You know what I mean? Like this.
It feels a lot like Braveheart, where you have all the squabbling Scottish tribes, and then the English just go, "Oh, you guys are all divided. We'll just take you now."
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's the thing. Like, there's a lot of people in the right wing movement as well. I mean, freedom movement, whatever you want to call it. They're like the big Chris Sky fans, and they say there's no political solution. There's no political solution. Like, voting is dumb. And I try to explain to these people that, politics is always a reality that you have to deal with. Like, back with Genghis Khan, there was politics in his tribe and all that going on. Like you can't escape. One does not simply escape politics ever. And at the end of the day, politics is grouping people, teaming people up, getting them moving in the same direction. It's like the basics of kind of organizing people, creating a hierarchy, and then leading towards something. And
that's just compliant with nature. And I hate to make two nature references in the same thing. That's like,
all right. That's okay.
Hierarchies in nature, so therefore they're going to exist in whatever we produce. So if like I've seen some people who are anarchists and stuff, and I'm like, that's not going to work though, because you're still going to need like the Council of Three or something that's going to be like dispute settling and all this other stuff.
It's fairy tale. It's fairy tale storybook.
Yeah,
because I've talked to anarchists too, and it's like, well, that sounds really sweet. That sounds great, but like, how the hell would that happen? How the hell are we gonna have a community where everyone, hey, yeah, I love this anarchy society. I can't wait to like be everyone's plumber and be the permanent street sweeper and get paid the same amount as the person who, like, I don't know, does next to nothing. Anyway, we don't have to pit stuff in anarchy. We can keep the conversation moving.
Yeah, there's better things to talk about.
Yeah. The merits of anarchy. That'd be a good podcast.
Yeah, then do like a debate. Maybe I can find an anarchist.
I've met one before in Toronto, if you can imagine.
All right, well, give him my details. We'll get him on the show. So what's been your major inspiration for the hilarious content that you make? Like I've garnered hours of laughs out of you. Like it was just amazing to scroll through your stuff.
Thanks, man. So you mentioned George Carlin. George Carlin was a big inspiration for me growing up, especially going through high school. Yeah, watching all of his specials is always really fun. I've always been a big fan of comedy in general. Like, I've always loved to watch stand-up. I was lucky enough to have cable as a kid, and we had Channel 44, which was I forget, what is it in Canada? Is it Comedy Network? It's Comedy Central here, right?
Comedy Network here, yeah. It's Comedy Central in America.
Oh, it's Comedy Network here. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, watching the Just for Laughs kind of compilations where it's a bunch of like 5-minute things. So like, I always love watching comedy, and I kind of got kind of musical back in my pot smoking phase at the end of university at the end of high school into university, and it was actually the campaign in 2019 where actually it was actually, you know, a big moment for me was the 2019 PPC conference, which I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And before I had created this song, which was a parody of, because I like writing parodies of California Girls. And California girls are undeniable. Daisy Dukes bikinis on top. And I changed that to Canadian people are so gullible. Climate change, let's tax them on top. Giving hearts are so manipulatable. Ooh, oh, 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 Canadians. Anyway, you can see it on my YouTube channel. But and I shared that with somebody at the PPC conference, and I had my guitar there for whatever reason, and they're like, "You have to play this in front of everybody." And it was like 700 people, and at the time I had done like open mics in front of like 20, maybe 50 people, and I was like, "Damn!" And they're like, "You're doing it tomorrow morning, and like to start off the day," and I was like, "Holy crap!" So yeah, that was a really big like performance moment for me, and like, you know, like standing ovation. Everyone was like, well, obviously, like a room full of PPC supporters like ripping on Justin Trudeau in song. Like, of course, it was a hit. But when I became a candidate, I told the team in Parkdale High Park, I said, we're going to do a lot of video content. I want to do a lot of video content. The only way we can combat it, like, you know, I'm getting called racist left, right, and center. The only way that we're going to combat this is with our own propaganda pretty well, like our own content that debunks what they're talking about and, you know, talks about what we're saying. Because, you know, I came from my background of working in video production and knowing it's much stronger than a brochure. A video can grab the heart and minds of people. So long story short, the PPC campaign in 2019 actually got me into YouTube because I started to pump out all these videos. I came up with this song Ironic right before Election Day. It's funny, like instead of campaigning door to door, one of the days I spent during my campaign dressing up like Alanis Morissette and filming a music video called Ironic, making fun of Antifa. But yeah, but when it was all said and done, because I was pushing to get videos out and also go to debates and doing all this stuff, and when it was all said and done, I was like, oh man, I have like 2,000 YouTube subscribers. That's actually like kind of significant. Like that's pretty big. That's actually a pretty big number, actually.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I've always kind of wanted to make content and be musical, so I'm like, I'm going to keep kind of feeding this and keep doing this. And well, then something happened in early 2020, and that gave me some more free time because I didn't have as much video production corporate jobs because the whole world was
imploded on itself.
Yeah. So that gave me a lot of time to kind of explore and try out a bunch of stuff. And I guess comedy inspirations. I've always like, you know, just from the YouTube days, I always liked Derek comedy, which had Childish Gambino. What's his name? Donald Glover.
Yeah, that's him.
Like that was one of his things. Like Barats and Beretta was also. These are like kind of more old school YouTube channels, but
I got to say my favorite was the cancel culture game, the Stompin' Tom parody. That was my favorite.
Thank you. I really like that one too. I think it's a good one.
They neutered Ron and they fired Don. That was amazing.
Yeah, actually, Bo Burnham is a big inspiration of mine. Actually, that's a good one because he does that thing where he combines music with comedy, and he also, he really makes great works of art that way.
And how he can keep it all in his head too is like, it just astounds me. So I think we're just about at the 1 hour mark here. So at this point in time, I would like to just leave an opportunity for you to let the people know where you can be found, where you can be followed, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, we were going to talk about like how comedy can be like a trend, like, you know, an effective thing right now. So maybe we could talk about that for a minute before I go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So essentially, I kind of stumbled upon comedy being effective in two different ways. One is how I've always been a fan of it, and I've always found it captivating and obviously entertaining. And the other is, after embracing the cynicism of politics, this is after the 2019 election, I started to notice when I talked to like my friends and family who I disagreed with on topics, whether it's, the best approach to environmentalism or climate change, or things to do with anything, racism or mass migration. I started to realize that if they say, hey, this is the talking point on mainstream media news, I started to realize that if I start to almost like defensively try to explain my position, that they actually just dig their heels in, and they just solidify their perspective even more. And then I started to like not care, and I started to kind of just confront these kind of situations with humor and ridicule and like mockery. And to be fair, it pisses them off because I'm mocking them, I'm ridiculing them, I'm ridiculing the people that they looked up to as good people and blah blah blah, and they say all these things and they squirm and they don't like it. And it's taken me a while to be comfortable doing that, because I don't like to make people uncomfortable. Like, I don't like to ruin their day or make them have to this or that. But looking at where we're at in history, looking at where we're at like right now in this situation, it's like, it's necessary. Mm-hmm. I am going to make you feel uncomfortable. I am going to use ridicule and mockery because I want you to think about it. I don't want to give your point of view more oxygen or more sort of like, well, I know that Justin Trudeau says he's a nice guy, but like, you gotta listen to me, guy. Like, no, I'm not going to give you any of that sort of benefit of the doubt anymore. No longer. But yeah, I can wrap it up now and tell them where they should find me, or did you want?
Yeah, go ahead. The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, so you can find me on YouTube at Greg Wycliffe, and also on Instagram at Greg Wycliffe, one word. On Twitter and TikTok, my tag is GDub, which is GDDUB, GDub, like GW, but with two Ds. That's pretty well it. I dropped a song recently on Spotify. You can find the YouTube music video there. It's called 2 More Weeks. So definitely check that out. And then if you want to see my best stuff, just go to the Greg Wycliffe YouTube channel, and then just go to the popular uploads, which should be like the first kind of playlist that you see when you scroll down there. But Brendan, thanks for having me, and all the best in the future of the flow of discourse, man. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Absolutely. Well, I can't express enough appreciation for you coming on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation today, and for everybody out there, take a listen to Greg's stuff, because you're not going to regret it. And so, with that being said today, people, if you wish to find out more about the flow of discourse, you can visit us on Facebook, Twitter, and no Instagram or anything yet. We are on YouTube at this current time. But as always, stay safe out there.